The reason we broke up was she decided I wasn't successful enough for her. She'd gotten a huge promotion and was making 3 times what I was. She wanted me to quit my job and go into custom furniture and was willing to finance my startup if I gave her 60% of the business. I politely declined and things started going downhill. I hear she's dating a VP now. I hope she's happy. I'm so sorry. I have to say you don't seem too broken up. Oh, I was sad. We'd been together for 6 months, but I wasn't looking for the long-term commitment she wanted, especially since it had to be on her terms. So you're single now? Yes. Good. I hereby state my intent of being your girlfriend. You need to stop talking now and let me finish. I've thought about this a lot. We may not mesh. We may end up despising each other. I'm a little okay. I'm a lot spoiled. I've had everything I ever wanted handed to me since I was 19. When it happens to you that young, it warps your perspective of reality. It's one of the reasons I love you so much. You do it gently, but you don't put up with a lot of foolishness. If we were together, I have a feeling I'd be a lot better as a human being. She paused to gather her thoughts. I know my money doesn't exactly intimidate you, but it makes you uncomfortable. Yeah, I got lucky and made a bunch of money, then inherited a bunch more when Steve died. There's nothing I can do about it, and I don't intend to give it up. There's a lot we could do with that money. Raise children is the first thing that come to my mind, but we could also be a boon to our community. There are people like you out there, people like Julie's mother, the preacher's son, others who could use a helping hand. We could be those hands. Curiosity got the better of me. Why do I need a helping hand? Your ex was right about one thing. You do need to go into the furniture business. You're a good construction foreman, I'm sure, but you're an artist with a piece of wood. People with money, would be thrilled to own one of your pieces. You have any idea how much a custom bedroom suite like you built for your future daughter would bring? I checked around, showed pictures to some people who were qualified to give an opinion. How much would you say you have in that suite, in man-hours and materials? I did some rough calculations. The materials weren't that much, it was the man-hours. I probably spent 100 hours on it. About 3,500. She gave a soft laugh. I talked to a woman who purchased something similar, and she gave 10 grand for it. When she saw yours, she told me if you would build one for her, she'd give you 12,500. If you pushed it, she'd probably go 15. Still don't think you could make a living doing what you love? Wow. I did some rough calculations. If I had enough orders, I could gross around 120 to 150 a year, based on a 40-hour week. Almost 80 would be profit. Not bad. Best of all, I'd still be working with my hands. She could see I was interested. Here's the deal. I'll give you a loan. $150,000. I'll give you a 10-year term at 4.5%, the current prime rate. This is a strictly business deal, and I'm confident you won't default. Regardless of whether we end up together, I believe in your talent. She sighed, got up, and rinsed her coffee cup. There, I've stated my intentions. It's all up to you now. Call me if you're interested. With a quick kiss on the cheek, she was out the door. I noticed she had left a packet on the table. Paperwork for the loan with a note to have a lawyer look it over. On top of it was her new phone number. I thought about it for about 3 days and called her. I could hear the excitement in her voice. Hi, I replied, I've been thinking about our discussion, and I think we should meet. If you're not busy Saturday, could you come by the house, say around 10? I think she was a little disappointed that I wasn't asking her out on a romantic date, but she agreed instantly. I told her to wear jeans and comfortable shoes. She was there 10 minutes early and found me in the garden, with buckets of fresh flowers around me. I gave her a quick kiss, which surprised her, then told her to get to work arranging the flowers. The season was almost over, but we managed to fill 20 vases. I caught her humming as she worked and grinned. I surprised her when I pulled my new Ford pickup out of the shed. Where's Steve's truck? On the used lot of the Ford dealership. If this is going to be a brand new start, I don't need his ghost hovering over us. She jumped into my arms and kissed me. I didn't see that coming. Very nice kiss, anyway. She was even more surprised when I backed the truck up to my shop. I have to load a few things and we'll be ready to go. I put the 3 rockers I'd finished on the back, careful to put padding between them. To her credit, she didn't ask, just helped me strap them down. We rode in silence until we were almost there. Jan still talks to me. She told me about your volunteering in the nursery, rocking the babies, She also asked me to look at a couple of the rockers because they were getting a little rickety. They were worn out, and the thought of you falling to the ground with a baby in your arms didn't set well with me, so I made these. She didn't say anything, just locked down on my hand and started humming again. Jan, her 3 nurses, and 2 maintenance men were waiting at the door. The maintenance men and I each took a chair and went to the nursery, where we unwrapped them and set them up. The men promised me they would throw the old rockers in the dumpster. Jan and Jen made a list and delivered the flowers. We were there 4 hours. I had a little surprise for her. Sarah, the vertically challenged woman I'd made a rocker for, had just had her baby. Jen was enthralled when the diminutive woman showed up, obviously pregnant. The chair was for her to rock her baby in. Sarah was a living doll, a blonde with blue eyes, and she looked like a pixie. Her husband was 6 feet 1 inch and was pretty sure she was responsible for the sun rising every day. She sat down, got a dreamy look on her face as she rocked and stroked her tummy. Finally getting up, she walked over to a step stool I had in the shop and stood on it. "Get your bum over here, Jamie. I want to thank you." Jen giggled as she still had to pull me down slightly to give me a big kiss. "There, I needed to do that. I'll send you a picture of me and the baby on this chair when we take her home from the hospital. Look for 2 more photos over the years. We decided pretty early we want 3. Every one of them is going to hear the story of how Uncle Jamie built this chair for us." I took Jen down to see her, and they hugged as Jen gushed over the pictures. "We're going down to the nursery now. Jamie made 3 rockers for the volunteers, and I intend to stress test everyone." Sarah smiled and asked the nurse if she'd make sure Jen got to rock her daughter. The nurse smiled back and said something could be arranged. When we got to the nursery, Jen and Janice immediately sat down. Janice gave me a pointed look and told he to get my bum in the 3rd chair. 3 nurses came out immediately and put a baby in our arms. I didn't get to object. Suddenly, I had a small bundle of crying humanity in my arms. Janice laughed while Jen and the nurses grinned. "Rock him, Jamie, and talk to him while you do. The motion and the sound of your voice should calm him down." So I did. I talked about his future, how he could be anything he wanted to be, and how much his parents were going to love him. I talked about Little League, video games, even girls when it was time. He stopped crying, cooed twice, and went asleep. I looked up to see the other 2 rockers motionless and the nurses in a cluster before us, tears leaking. Way too much estrogen, I suspect. My little man was asleep, and they took him from me. My arms felt suddenly very empty. Jen didn't say a word on the way home, and I liked the silence, so I didn't break it. When we got back to the house, she looked at me. "What now?" "Well, I think we've done our civic duties for the day. How about a nice dinner and a night at the barn? I wouldn't mind a little dancing to end the day. Pick you up at 7? On the dot." With a quick kiss, she was out of the truck and gone. I piddled around for the rest of the afternoon, thinking, was there a future here? Would she ever miss her old life? Would I offend her sometime down the road and watch her disappear again? Would the money get in the way? Was it worth it to try? Of course it was. She had been my dream woman since the day I met her. I didn't get a chance to get out. She came bouncing down the steps before I was in park. Tight jeans, western shirt, red boots, and a hat to match them. She slid in giggling. "I can't wait. I've wanted to do this again since the last time you took me." I tried to talk Steve into going once, but he said it was beneath our dignity. Boy, did he get an earful. I asked him since when did having fun become undignified? Then I asked him how he could describe his fishing trips as dignified when he came home in dirty clothes, smelling like fish and bait. I asked if thought his business associates would approve, and he got pissed. I almost went by myself. "I tried calling you, but you were out on a date. Things were pretty tense for a while around the house. Well, I expect you to have a ball. I want you to keep me and a few more cowboys gasping for breath as we try to keep up with you. Let your hair down, shake that hot rump like you're trying to make it come off, and have a good time." She slid over and gave me a loud kiss right on the ear. It rang for 3 miles. It was deja vu all over again when we pulled into the parking lot in my truck. I'd gotten all the bells and whistles, and it was a 4-wheel drive hunk of gleaming chrome and shiny paint. Then Jen got out, and once again everyone forgot what vehicle we'd arrived in. When we met up with my friends, it was like we'd just seen them last week. Barb was there with her new husband, and they hugged like long-lost sisters, while she showed her pictures of her wedding. She must have taken our advice to heart. The guy was super nice, successful, and totally in love. Barb told Jen when he went to the bathroom that she had told him all about her past when he asked her to marry him. He just stared at me long enough to make me nervous before he spoke. "You over that shit now? It's all in the past?" I told him it was, told him how much I loved him and that I'd sign any kind of prenup he wanted. "Well then, good enough. Want to set a date now?" She was crying by now. Best of all, my kids love him, especially the oldest boy. The fathers of my other two are still in their lives, but he's just walked away. When my man isn't working, that boy is his shadow. When he got back, Jen gave him a big kiss, then patted his cheek. That was for being the man Barb needed. "I see many happy years ahead of you." He glowed. "Thank you, ma'am. I'll dance at your next wedding." Jen looked at him funny, and I had to explain it was an old Southern saying that indicated gratitude, and she grinned. "Keep your dancing shoes shined. I'm hoping you'll be needing them soon." The group cheered and I looked at her. Well, it seemed she had declared her intentions to the world. Regardless, we had a great time. Jen danced with most guys from our group, but every time the band did a slow tune, she had me on the floor, rubbing against until I was hard as a rock. Then she'd give an extra push, giggle, and back off. When we left, her well-put-together look was history. Her shirt was sweat-soaked, with the tails out, and her hair hung in limp ringlets around her face. She'd given up on her makeup and had washed it off. I thought she looked like one sexy mess. I grinned, thinking about how her fashion friends would react if they could see her now. She saw the grin. "What are you grinning about? How hot you look right now." It must have been a good answer because she snuggled as closely as she could in the truck and didn't let any space get between us until we were in her drive. She knew I wanted to go slow, so she didn't invite me in. We did manage to steam the cab of the truck up like teenagers, making out for about 20 minutes. I got my first intentional feel of her firm jugs. Jen had the classic model's body, tall, thin, with on the smaller side. Still felt great. When we finally came up for air, she popped the pearl snaps of her shirt open. She hopped out of the truck and strutted into the house, turning at the last second and holding her shirt open, giving me one more look. I could hear her laughing as she closed her door. She was banging on my door at 7 the next morning. I stumbled to the door, and before I could speak, she shot past me. "Shower. Get presentable. I'll make breakfast, and then you're taking me fishing. I want to see what the attraction is." I got myself together and hooked the boat up while she finished breakfast. She asked about 1,000 questions while I tried to eat. I finally held up my hand. "Jen, honey, wait until we get on the water. That way I won't have to answer the same question twice." She stopped talking instantly. It wasn't until we were in the truck that I realized I'd called her honey. I got the boat into the water and tied it to the dock. Then we went to the bait shop for worms. I was going to start her out slowly. I also picked up some soft drinks and water for the cooler. I eased out until I was past the no-wake zone and opened her up. Steve had picked a really good boat, mostly from the suggestions I'd given him. Jen stood beside me, laughing with the wind in her face. I got to the little cove I picked, cutting the engine and using the trolling motor. I put us about 20 feet out from a dead pine that had fallen into the water, knowing the fish would use it for shelter. I took a standard rig and walked her through everything I was doing, teaching her how to tie a hook to the line, how much weight she'd need for the size cork she would be using, then showed her how to put the worm on the hook. If she was grossed out, she never showed it. "I'm going to cast it now. Watch me." I flipped the rod and the cork landed a couple of feet from the tree. I handed it to her, telling her to watch the cork. If it went under, pull back with a steady pressure and reel. Make sure you keep the tension on the line to keep the fish from spitting the hook out. Then I sat back and watched. "You're not going to fish?" "I'm not here to fish. I'm here to teach you how to fish. Are you watching your cork? See how it's heading for the tree? Don't let it have enough line to make it, or it will tangle your hook. As soon as it runs out of line, it'll go under." That's exactly what happened. Jen squealed as the rod bent, reeling as I had told her. 3 minutes later, I used the net to scoop up a really nice bluegill, easily a pound. "Well done, Jen. That's a good-sized fish for the species. And they're really good eating. Will you fix it for me?" "Sure, but here's a better idea. Why don't you catch enough for both of us?" We worked the cove for the next hour, moving slowly along the bank. She caught 4 more bluegill, but only one was big enough to keep. We were getting ready to leave the cove to try another place, and she wanted one more cast at the tree. She'd been practicing. We had to cut her line once when she tangled in a tree, and her first couple of casts went maybe 10 feet, but she was getting progressively better. Her cast was perfect, landing about a foot from the point of the tree. The cork went under instantly, and Jen almost screamed when the rod went double. She fought the fish for 10 minutes while I hovered with the net. I got it just as it spit the hook out and tossed it aboard. She caught a bass, a nice one that went 2.5 pounds on the scales. She asked if it was edible, and when she found out it went into the live well. We worked another cove, hitting a school of bluegill, and she added 3 more nice ones to the pile. By then it was getting close to noon, so we stopped. They don't bite well when it's too hot. We'd have to come back late in the evening to catch more. Can we? Well, sure, but do you want to go all the way home and then come back?
No.
I'd like to hang out on the lake. You can teach me how to drive the boat. I made her make a few laps in a big cove to get her used to handling it, explaining the rules of the road to her. Once we were in the main channel, I let her go a little faster. An hour later, we were zipping around like she'd been driving a boat for years. She pouted when I made her slow down and go back to the marina. I explained it to her. If we don't get back pretty soon, we'll be using the trolling motor. We're almost out of gas. She pulled up to the pump like she had been doing it forever, and the attendant secured it so he could fill it up. For another 20, he parked it in a slip for us while we went to lunch. The marina had a pretty good grill, and we inhaled a couple of burgers, then sat and enjoyed the air conditioning for a bit. We were getting looks, but I had gotten used to that. Jen had on Daisy Dukes and a cute crop top. Her hair was back in the messy bun she seemed to favor. I think one woman recognized her but didn't say anything. I could hear the discussion in her head. That's Jen Foster. Nah, it couldn't be. What would a supermodel like her be doing in this little grill in the middle of nowhere with such an average-looking guy? She's still hot, though. That is one lucky guy. I totally agreed. I nearly had a heart attack when she stood on the dock and wiggled out of her shorts and top, showing a very nice bikini. It was tiny but not vulgar, if that makes any sense. Everyone, and I mean everyone, thought she looked good. The gas attendant bent over so far around the pump to get a better look at her that he overbalanced and ended up in the water. Jen never missed anything and had a big smirk on her face. Then she totally blew their minds by giving me a scorcher of a kiss before getting on the boat. Better let me drive, honey. You look a little out of it. We zipped up and down the lake for an hour before she gave me the wheel. Take us somewhere private, baby. I took her to the mouth of the lake and into a little cove I had discovered by accident. Trees hung over the entrance, and you had to crouch down, but once you cleared them, there was a beautiful little cove with a strip of white sand on the left side. I bumped the nose into the sand, jumping out and securing the boat to a big limb. It wasn't long until she had a couple of towels spread out. She lay down and undid her top, tossing it to the side. Rub me down, honey. I did. It was one of the hottest experiences of my life. I did her back and legs, and she insisted I do her bottom. Her cheeks were mostly bare, and it was impossible to keep my hands from shaking. It didn't help any when she thrust those buns up, filling my hands. When I was done, she casually rolled over and I was like a deer in the headlights, staring at her perfect little jugs. She giggled. Finish the job. Usually I don't have the bottoms on. We're in a secluded space, honey, and the boat is between us and the entrance. We'll hear someone coming well before they will be able to see us. I rubbed her down. I worked my way down her tummy, admiring her smooth skin. I skipped the good parts and rubbed her legs, starting at her toes and ended up at the top of her thighs. Do the rest, please.
No.
If I get that far, I won't be able to stop. She cooed as she rubbed my chest. Would that be a bad thing? Making love to your girlfriend on a sandy little beach? It's just us, baby. I know part of you wants to. I gave her a scorcher of a kiss and stood, sliding my board shorts down. I had just gotten them past my knees when I heard a giggle. I yanked my shorts up while Jen scrambled to get her top on. 2 girls, late teens I'd say, came around the boat in a red canoe. They grinned at us. Sorry to disturb you. This is such a pretty place, I wanted to show it to my friend. We'll leave now. They seemed as embarrassed as we were, and Jen smiled. You're here now. Come on and enjoy the sand with us. If you're thirsty, we have sodas and water. I had slipped into the water, glad it was a little cool. I climbed into the boat and came out with a Coke and a water, along with a few snacks. Jin talked to them for half an hour, charming them until they pretty much told her their life stories. They were so absorbed with Jin they almost forgot I was there. Jin looked at me with an arched eyebrow, and I grabbed a rod and started working the cove, walking away from them. I managed to catch a couple of nice bass and another fat bluegill before returning. Jen was holding them as they cried on her shoulders. We left them and returned to the main channel. We fished until it was almost dark. Jen caught a lot of fish, and we had a pretty full live well when we hit the landing. I had her back the truck up to secure the boat, and she did really well for her first time. She insisted on helping me clean the fish before she left. Of course, there was a pretty lengthy makeout session before she got in her car. I thought a lot about it while I was at work. She was sitting on my steps when I got home. I needed to get her a key made. She was there for her fish dinner. I walked her through how to make tartar sauce, slaw, and showed her how to make hush puppies. I rolled the bluegill in seafood seasoning after dipping them in an egg and milk bath. I let them set while I did homemade French fries, then dropped them in my fryer, waiting until they popped back to the top golden brown. The base, I pan-fried in bacon grease after rolling the fillets in a seasoned cornmeal. We ate like pigs, cleaned up, put the dishes in the dishwasher and snuggled down on the couch. The heavy meal had us out in minutes. I woke up at 1, pulling Jin with me into the bedroom. She stripped down to her panties and climbed into bed, asleep in seconds. The smell of coffee woke me up. No one should be allowed to look as good as she did in the morning, I thought, as I watched her bustle about. Get your shower. Breakfast is almost ready. 20 minutes later, I was seated at the table, eating probably the best omelet I'd ever tasted. I asked what it was, and she rattled something off in French. I think the loose translation was delicious eggs. She was chattering happily and I smiled. As she was clearing the dishes, I asked her a question. Jin, while we wage slaves are at work, how do rich supermodels spend their days? She stiffened and I felt like I'd made a mistake. Why? Does being one of the idle rich offend you? Not at all, but I suspect you're not one of those. You have too much energy, too much life in you to just sit around. If it bothers you, you don't have to talk about it. I was just wondered what you did to keep from getting bored. Her smile came back. I volunteer a lot. I usually spend a couple of hours at the hospital, rocking babies. Everyone, and I mean everyone, wants to know where those rockers came from. They caught one husband trying to sneak one into his wife's room, and another trying to sneak it out the door. I knew that was a soft jab at me for not signing the loan papers. She didn't nag, but she did bring it up now and then. What else? Well, I spend a few hours a week on the phone and computer with my financial advisors. I saw a few models who didn't watch their money, and it disappeared. It's why I have 3 separate advisors. It was pretty obvious she didn't want to remind me of how rich she was. Good thinking. I trust most of my friends, but only a few with money. A sigh of relief passed her lips. I also sit on a few boards. Plus, I work with the fire department. I stay pretty busy, but here lately I think I've been a little slack in my main pursuit. I walked right into it. What's that? The smirk told me everything. Taking care of you. Making you see I'm the only woman who'll love you like you deserve. I think I'm making progress, but Jesus, you can be slow at times. I'm in love with you, moron. Don't make me think I might have gotten it wrong. Look at the time. Don't talk. Give me a nice kiss and go to work. Shoo now. I was out the door with the taste of her lips on mine, dazed and confused. I was seriously ineffective at work. The guys caught on and the teasing started. They shut up pretty quick when Jin stopped by just before lunch. Work just stopped as they watched Jin get out of her Mercedes. You forgot your cell phone, honey. How am I supposed to know what you'd like for dinner if I can't get in touch? Oh, and I brought you lunch. She handed me a paper bag and a thermos, gave me a kiss that almost melted my boots, steel toes and all, and was gone. The guys were quiet for a while, then they started. Damn, Jamie, you're fighting above your weight there, brother. Another chimed in. Man, she looks just like that supermodel. What was her name, Jane? No, Jen something. You lucky scumsucker. I grinned. Yeah, she gets that a lot. My concrete guy chimed in. Yeah, but she has a serious flaw. She must be dumb as a rock to be hooked up with you. The girl got vision problems? Did she ride the short bus at school? She's probably smarter than all of us put together. That wasn't a junker she was driving. She's hot, well off, and she likes to fish. She's my dream girl. Even as the words came out of my mouth, I knew they were true. She was beyond my dream girl. She was my ultimate fantasy. I was struck. She was my fantasy, my dream girl. But how often do fantasies manage to make the transition to reality and survive? Not many. Most fairy tales didn't start the way they read now. The evil stepmother in Cinderella, for instance. In the original version, she was forced to dance in red-hot shoes until she died. Most were tales designed to scare the shit out of kids and keep them safe at home. It got a lot more complicated when I got home. I sighed when I saw the car in my driveway. Mom, we didn't exactly get along that great, mostly because she was pushing me to settle down with a nice girl and get on with producing the next generation. I wondered what she would think of Jin. As usual, I came in the back door, surprised to hear peals of laughter. I heard Jin talking. So that's how she came to have a lobster grab onto her jug. They stopped when I entered, but were grinning like mad. I see you've met Mom. Mom spoke up. Yes. It's a shame I had to come to her, even though I didn't know there was a her to come to. Were you ever going to introduce us? That's when it got surreal. Mom, don't be mean to him, just because he's a little slow. Mom snorted. Honey, if it was left to him, I'd hear about you sometime between the second and third child. I'm really glad you're in his life. You're going to have your hands full keeping him straight, but I think he's worth the effort. Besides, if it gets tough, you have reinforcements you can call in. I'm sure you haven't met his grandmother yet, have you? Jin shot her eyes to me. She never understood why I didn't talk about my family much. Maybe now she would understand. No, but I can't wait. Can you come for lunch Sunday? Maybe we'll get Jamie to grill, or better yet, do a fish fry. Try not to get here before 1, though, so we'll have time to get home from church. I swear if Mom's smile got any bigger, her jaw would split. We'll be here. I might bring my sister and a few of his cousins. That way you can meet most of them at one time. Call and let me know how many so I can make sure we have plenty. I sat while they pretty much ignored me. When Mom got up to leave, she gave Jen a tremendous hug. I got a peck on the cheek and some whispered words. She's perfect, son. Try not to screw this up. Jin just grinned. We had a light supper, neither very hungry. We cleaned the kitchen and snuggled on the couch. After a little snuggling, the kissing began. This went on for about 10 minutes before I gently pushed her back. Her face told me her feelings were hurt a little, so I leaned in and kissed again. I want to talk, baby. You snuggling up to me does not help my brain function, due to lack of blood. Jen looked a little apprehensive. What do you want to talk about? Us. If she looked apprehensive before, now she looked downright nervous. What about us? That came out wrong. I want to talk about us, but first I want to talk business. I've decided to trust your business instincts, honey. I signed the loan papers today and gave my boss a month's notice. In 30 days, I'll be the co-owner of J&J Custom Furniture Designs. Her face lit up. That's great news. I was worried you wouldn't. By the way, what does the name mean? It's short for Jen and Jamie. This will be your business as much as mine. I'm sure you'll be the hand at the helm. You know how to network and negotiate. I know how to build furniture. Seems pretty equitable to me. That is, if you'll do it. Of course I will, honey, but it will be your business. No, it won't. I had the agreement changed. You and I will own it, 50-50. I declared your knowledge an equal investment. Don't fight me on this, or the deal is off. Are we good? Instead of talking, she dove back into my arms. Between the kisses and the tears, I was fairly certain there was a yes in there somewhere. Good. Your lawyer has the amended papers. Sign them anytime it suits you. Tomorrow morning, I'll be waiting outside his office, pen in hand. Good. Now on to personal business. You know I was infatuated with you from the day we met. I didn't know you, or that you were famous and rich in your own right. All I knew was the most beautiful woman in the world was standing before me. As our friendship grew, I discovered you were even more beautiful on the inside. You were my dream woman, even if you never had a dime. She was on the edge of the couch, looking too scared to breathe. You also know of my moral compass, so I just loved you from afar while Steve was alive. Steve's gone now, and now my dream woman is here, up close and single. I'm glad now with what I'm about to say that we haven't slept together yet. No, that's not right. We have slept together, we just haven't, consummated our relationship. This way I can look into the eyes of our daughters and sons and tell them to be really sure, because we were never having sex until we were engaged. Maybe that will be a strong moral. That was all I got out before she tackled me so hard the sofa flipped over. She rolled with it until she was on top of me. Eyes moist, chest heaving, hands trembling. Say it, say it, say it. I wanted to be on my knees, but I guess this will work. Jennifer Marion Foster, will you marry? Yes. You didn't let me finish. Oh, you're finished all right. I didn't really mean to propose before I had the ring. We'll go pick it out this weekend. No, we won't. You will pick it out. I want something nice, but it has to fit into your salary range. I've had rocks before, and this time I don't want a rock. I want a symbol of love, understand? It doesn't matter what it is. I'll wear it with pride. You hear me? I guess I may as well start now. Yes, dear. She rained kisses all over my face. Good boy. You're going to be so easy to train. I managed to get her off me and the sofa upright, patting a seat. Maybe not. I need you to listen to me. There will be no discussion on this. Jen's eyes widened, but she held my hand and was still smiling. First, I know you're rich. Money I'll never be able to make in my lifetime. The thing is, I don't care. You're going to want things when we start a family, and I have no problem with you spending money to get them. The thing is, I want our children. Hold on a minute. That sounded so good I want to say it again. I want our children to grow up to be level-headed, not spoiled princes and princesses. I want them to have a work ethic, to know the value of saving and spending wisely. I also want a prenup. Your lawyer drew it up for me. Plainly speaking, I never wanted any of your money. So if we don't end up together, he wrote it up like that. If we split, you keep what was yours, I keep what was mine, and everything we accrued together gets split 50-50ths. I'm not going into this to fail, and I'm pretty sure you aren't either. So all they will ever be is words on a paper we're not really sure we remember. Agreed? Can we maybe? No. Take it or leave it. I want you 100% sure I wanted you. Not your money, not your fame, just you. She had a hard time hiding the smirk, so she looked down and said, Yes, dear. Good. I realize you'll want a nicer house when the children arrive, and I'm all right with that. I don't want anything like you and Steve had. I want a nice roomy home to fill with children and love. Agreed? Yes, dear. I have a condition. For right now, while we get our business off the ground, we stay right here. There's not a thing wrong with this house, honey. Houses are just glorified boxes designed to hold love. So I'm fine with the one we have right now. That kind of threw me. She had lived in mansions with servants, but she wanted to stay in an 1,800 square foot modular. She saw my look. The place Steve and I had, the ones I had before we got together, weren't houses. They were monuments to success. You couldn't be spontaneous with servants around. One wrong picture and careers could be destroyed. I want something where I can get up in the middle of the night and go raid the freezer for ice cream stark naked and have no worries. Besides, the house I grew up in was smaller than this and I loved it. You need to remember, honey, I wasn't born rich. I lived a pretty average life until I was 15 and got discovered. I've always hated that word. Well, all right then. I'll take a little time tomorrow and look for a symbol of our love. It may not be just a diamond. I always thought they were kind of bland. If you just don't like it, I'll try again. Give this some thought. I don't want to start looking for venues tomorrow. I want a nice long engagement to give us enough time to make sure we really mesh. I may disappoint you in bed. I might snore or have some kind of habit that irritates you to distraction. I guess I just want to debug our relationship before we say our vows. Does that make sense? She grinned. It does. And I agree. I'm sure I have habits that you find distracting. I'm sure we'll try to change for each other, but if we can't, we'll learn to deal with it. Now, enough talking. Let's get to the consummating part of our relationship. I'd like to say making love to a millionaire supermodel was unworldly, that I saw and felt things I'd never experienced before. You know what? It was. Not because she was rich. Not because she had incredible beauty. I saw and felt those things because she was the woman that I loved. Her body was fantastic. I found she was a little ticklish in certain spots, and extremely responsive in others. I kissed her whole body at some point during the night, and she nearly jumped off the bed when I hit the back of her knees. She was as smooth as a baby, and she told me as we came down from the first round I better like it like that because she'd had a laser treatment years before to help her career. I rubbed the soft mound and grinned, liking the feeling. We did everything we could think of to each other and talked about a lot more. As we talked, our hands wandered, and in minutes I was as stiff as I was the first time. Jen climaxed twice before I couldn't hold back any longer. We collapsed and I went asleep. She let me get 6 hours in before waking me for a morning round. When we fell back, she giggled. "Shower time, baby. We smell like old sex. I prefer the scent fresh, so let's get clean and see what we can do about it." "I can't. I have to work." "Not today. You would be 2 hours late as it is." "Don't worry. I called your boss and told him you had something important you had to do and wouldn't be in today. You don't have to thank me. Now let's get you all spiffy clean. You have an errand to run." We played in the shower, but she wouldn't let it get serious. After I dressed, she gave me a dandy little kiss and pretty much shoved me out the door. I grinned as I drove away. I didn't need to shop for a ring. I had already had it custom made by a friend. It was a nice sized diamond in the shape of a heart, with 2 small emeralds also in the shape of hearts flanking it. The bands that held them to the mount were cleverly designed to look like skeleton keys, and the inside had an inscription. "You'll always have the key to my heart." It was corny, but she knew I meant it, and when she saw the ring and read the inscription, she cried hard for 2 hours, stopping just long enough to give me kisses from time to time. We lived in a world of lust and love until Saturday. We picked the last flowers of the season, getting just enough for 10 bouquets. I wondered how Jen was going to tell Janice. It was really subtle. As soon as she saw her, she shoved the ring under her nose. Jan let out a squeal, and soon she and the 3 nurses who always seemed to be around her grabbed Jen in a really nice group hug. When they realized they were ignoring me, they abandoned Jen and smothered me with hugs and kisses. When it came time to give the bouquets away, I gave Janice and each of her nurses one as a thank you. We distributed the rest, 3 to children and 3 to seniors, before ending the day in the rockers, holding babies. Janice brought the tears out again when she told Jen I was going to make an excellent father. The first thing Jen did when we got home was drag me to the bedroom. Luckily, it was a quick, 90-minute romp for us. She shoved me towards the bathroom. "Shower, shave, and put on something nice. The girls will be here any minute." Melody brought her husband, just so I'd have someone to talk to. Sandy showed up with Janice, and after quick kisses we were evicted from the living room. I took it out to the shop, grabbed a couple of beers out of the refrigerator, and turned on a college football game. We were about 5 beers in when they found us, sitting in rockers and singing the fight song of Ed's team. Melody led him to their car, glad she had less than 2 glasses of wine, and soon they were all gone. Jen started kissing me again before their taillights were out of sight. We didn't play because she wanted to go to church in the morning. She made sure we sat with friends and waved her left hand around a lot. Soon a ripple went through the congregation, and the preacher, sharp as always, noticed. As he shook hands, he smiled, and when he got to us, he wrapped Jen up in a big hug. "You got him, did you?" She laughed. "He shouldn't have taught me to fish. I took the lessons to heart. I used the right bait, letting him run with the hook before reeling him in. I think he was happy when I scooped him up in the net." After talking about how seriously offended he'd be if we didn't let him perform our service, he turned us loose. It took us an hour to get from the front steps to the car because people were stopping to congratulate us, and by us, I meant Jen. Seems I was just along for the ride. A few husbands clapped me on the back and told me to get used to it. This was my life from now on. Mom, Gran, all my aunts and cousins descended on us that afternoon. We didn't cook. Jen just ordered pizzas. I lasted about an hour before I slipped out to the building and worked on a couple of rockers. Mom came in an hour later, went to the fridge and grabbed a beer, then sat down in a completed rocker. I was a little leery of her at first. She was rich, beautiful, could have any man she wanted, live anywhere in the world she chose. I think she's the real deal, honey. The woman loves you. I wouldn't be surprised if you start your family right away. She really wants children, more specifically your children. I'm gonna have the prettiest grandbabies in the world, and that's not an exaggeration. Well done, Jamie, well done. She got up after she finished her beer, turning as she reached the door. Two things. You treat that woman like gold. You hear me? And I better damn well have one of these rockers by the time the first grandchild comes. All I could do was grin. She decided she wanted a June wedding. That was 9 months away and suited me fine. I worked my notice and spent the evenings setting up the shop. Jen thought I should push rocking chairs as our signature piece. We made an assembly line, although every rocker was just a bit different, and we did custom orders. Jen insisted we take ads out in magazines geared to the upscale home market. Of course, Jen was the model. The ad campaign was brilliant. In the front of the magazine, she was sitting in a chair as she was now, holding a baby. Midway through, there was another ad. Her in late middle age holding another baby, while a young woman looked lovingly at them. Almost at the back, there was another ad. Her makeup artist was a genius, and I got an idea of what Jen would look like in her 70s. Still hot, slender, with pure white hair. She was holding another baby while a middle-aged woman and a younger one stood behind her. There was a banner over them, for generations, and a tag up front. J&J Rockers, built for more than one lifetime. Guaranteed. I was struggling over what to charge. I used local oak, the best I could find, and with labor I had about $700 in each on average. If a customer wanted something custom, the price went up. I was thinking $2,000 and not feeling good about it when Jen called me to the computer. She had listed our prices, and a standard rocker went for $5,000, more if it was customized. That's highway robbery. No one will pay that. She grinned and changed pages. 19 orders so far, and the site has only been up for a day. I wouldn't worry too much if I were you. I could make about 2 a week using an assembly line process, 3 if I worked 50 hours. I refused to hurry. People were paying for the best, and I intended to give it to them. We were getting ready to ship our 10th chair when we got a phone call from the owner. She wanted it autographed. Jen said sure, and then turned bright red when the customer wanted me to sign it, not her. Each chair had a unique feature. A number was carved into it in such a way that it wasn't noticeable. We didn't advertise that feature, and years later, I was called as a witness in a lawsuit, the complainant saying the chair wasn't mine, as it was advertised. I examined the chair and agreed. There was an uproar, and the judge asked how I knew. I asked to speak to the judge in private, showed him a few photos of my work with the numbers featured. There was no number on the chair in question. The seller, in turn, sued the shop she got it from, showing the letter of provenance they had provided. Jen had moved her only relative, her Aunt Beth, the sister of the aunt that raised her, into her condo. I don't think we liked each other that well to start, but we must have grown on each other because soon she was helping in the shop, mostly computer and paperwork. Jen ran our finances and made sure she drew a good check every week. Jen had gotten more into the building end of the business. I still didn't like her near the saws, lathes, drills, and other assorted power tools found in our business, so she concentrated more on assembly and finish. It took me a long time to get used to seeing her in jeans and a t-shirt, bandana holding her hair back, with a shop apron and elbow-length gloves completing the outfit. We were up to 4 a week by then. One of her mega-rich friends dropped by. Jen, the consummate businesswoman, met him in nice clothes and gave him a tour of the shop. She led him into the house, showing him the custom-made 4-poster bed and the matching chests and bedside tables I'd built for her. Next, she showed him the second bedroom, set up for a girl. He came back into the shop and, after a round of coffee and pecan pound cake, made his pitch. Jen knows I am divorced. What she doesn't know is that I got custody of our daughter in the divorce. Seems her mother had a lot of bad habits that made it impossible to leave our daughter with her. She's 7 years old, and her favorite thing in the whole world is sitting in the custom rocker I ordered, number 29, by the way, and letting me rock her to sleep while I read her one of her favorite stories. That rocker has bonded us closer and brought us more peace than the tens of thousands I spent on therapy. She's already told me she wants her own rocker for her 8th birthday, and I want to surprise her with a whole new bedroom suite. Can you do it? I'll make up any shortfall you have concentrating on it, and you would have 7 months. Talk it over with your wife and get back to me. Oh, and you're not just a furniture maker. You're an artist in wood. You're not a father yet, but Jen says it will be soon. You'll find, Jamie, that once you have a child, especially a little girl, your world changes. He left, taking the uneaten portion of the cake. He kind of insisted, so we let him. Jen and I made a quiet dinner and snuggled down on the couch. What do you think? Jack told me that even though he's worth almost $1 billion, his most prized possession is your rocker. Will you do it? Tell Aunt Beth to inform everyone who orders a chair that there is a 6-month backlog. It should take me 4 months of concentrated effort, but we can get it done. Call him back and tell him we agree to do this. Tell him we may need to consult from time to time. We need to know more about his daughter. What is she really like? What doesn't she like? I don't intend to make something she'll grow out of in 3 or 4 years, but I would like to incorporate some subtle things to give her joy. She kissed me hard and grinned. Good. Consider it practice for our kids. We already have one for the first girl, but you need to think about boys down the line. I knew she wanted kids, but we never discussed a number. How many children should we have? She blushed and looked down. As many as I can bear safely, but considering my age, 3 or 4 if we space them closely. She glowed at my reply. Good answer. We need to get on that as soon as we tie the knot. I figure our first should come along 9 months, and 1 day after the wedding. Jen surprised me by having Jack bring his daughter to the shop. I had her rocker ready to assemble, and I needed to make sure it was to her liking. I'd made it almost full size, to give her room to grow with it. She was a bright and inquisitive child who followed Beth and Jen around as they explained things to her. Jack took advantage of the time to review my plans. Her favorite bedtime story was about a princess who becomes friends with a dragon and all the adventures they had. So on the back of the header panel, in amongst the flowers and vines, was a princess on the back of her favorite dragon. I went through about 8 headers before I got it right, but it was worth every minute to see her smile. Jen was instrumental in the design of her bed, a 4-poster with a canopy. Her vanity featured the heart-shaped mirror, that framed the body of a dragon curled around it. It was finally done, and we went to deliver and set it up. We arrived just after Allison went to school and just barely got done before she got home. Jack filmed her reaction. First, she just stood in the middle of the room, twirling slowly. Then she let out a shriek of pure joy and dove on the bed, laughing and crying at the same time. It wasn't until the next day she found our gift. I'd carved a dragon out of black walnut, sanding it to a velvety texture and coating it with oil, making it so dark it seemed to glow. The princess that stood beside of it with a hand on its shoulder was out of holly, a wood that finished almost snow white. The contrast was very striking. We went back to the backlog of rockers, by now almost a year behind. 6 months later, a magazine was couriered to us, Architectural Digest. The cover was Allison's bedroom, and the article was about Jack's mansion. There was even a shot of Allison holding the dragon and princess. Jack went into detail about how the famous former model Jen Foster and her fiancé had designed and built every piece, making it one of a kind. He mentioned the purchase of one of our rockers and how it had led him to us. Our business phone lit up like the Christmas tree in New York. Everyone from the royalty of Europe to sheiks of the Middle East and half the millionaires in America wanted a custom-designed bedroom. Just excellent, Jamie. I'm pretty sure this will be passed on to daughter after daughter long after you and I are gone. I can't tell you how much I envy you. I was surprised. Me? You're a self-made man. You have the personal numbers of leaders across the globe. If you sneeze, Wall Street jumps 50 points. Why would you envy me? All that I've done, all that I will ever do, it will be abstract, all coming down to numbers. I admit I'm a bit of a savant when it comes to money, but fortunes are made and lost every day. Long after anyone remembers either of us, your rockers will still be here. And while everyone wants money, you can't rock your child in it. You can't snuggle the love of your life with $100 bills. More love will come across the seats of your creations than will ever be achieved by money, mine, or anyone else's. Jen was right about you. Jen's pretty much right about everything. Why is she right about me? She said you were the most genuine man she'd ever met. A man who could stand by his convictions no matter what the cost and still sleep at night. A man who would always protect and put his family first. You're a unicorn, brother. You don't exist. For some reason, that conversation stuck with me for the rest of my life. Jack surprised the shit out of me by asking if Jen and I would take him and his daughter fishing. The next weekend we had them on the boat. Jen was well past the cork and splash stage by then. but she had a ball teaching Allison. She beamed with pride when she hooked and landed her first fish. Jack was a pretty quick study and managed to catch a few himself. He ended up buying a medium-sized pontoon boat. He could fish off it, but more importantly, it would hold Allison and 6 of her friends. Jack spent almost every Saturday on the lake, often in the company of one of the mothers. He seemed to favor one, a widow his age who had a daughter that Allison loved like a sister. She was nowhere near as rich as he, maybe being worth 25 million tops. Jen grinned and said, "We may end up having to do another bedroom soon." Then winter came and fishing season was over unless you were a diehard, and much as I love fishing, I wasn't doing it in an insulated snowmobile suit and a full face helmet. I had 2 friends who did that, often having to stop and break the ice off their lines. No thank you. Jen insisted we take a vacation in January, flying us to Vail for some skiing. We took Mom and Aunt Beth along, skiing while they shopped. The condo was really nice. Usually I didn't bring it up, but curiosity got me and I asked how much it cost a night. "Nothing. We own it, honey." "Well then." Jen giggled at the look on my face. "It's an investment, baby. I have a management company rented out for us when we don't want it. It's actually returning a pretty good dividend. We donate all profits to several local volunteer fire departments. We even let firemen stay here free during the off-season. All tax deductible, of course." Jen had found an upscale country western club online. One night found us at the club. Jen had gotten Mom and Beth cowgirl outfits complete with hats. It's kind of hard on a guy when he realizes his mother is a bit of a fox. Didn't bother any of the guys who asked her for dances, some as young as 25, some in their 60s, but she could have been on the floor for every dance if she had wanted. Beth wasn't as pretty, but she was still a decent-looking woman, so she didn't lack for company. We all went home exhausted and Jen burst out laughing in the bright lights of the condo living room. She was sure Beth had a bra on when we left, and now she was sporting the natural look. Beth fled to her bedroom while Mom grinned. "Don't be hard on her. This is the first time she's gone out in 4 years, since her husband died. So what if she got a bit naughty? Good for her." Jen couldn't help a little teasing. "Did you get a little naughty with her, Mom?" Mom grinned. "I didn't lose my bra, if that's what you're asking. Good night, kids." I sat with my mouth open while Jen rolled around on the floor. March came, and Jen had been looking at the seed catalogs I always ordered, planning our flower beds for the season. By the way she ordered, I was going to have to expand my plot. A lot. Mom and Beth had bonded after the vacation, and they joined a book club, which led to a more expanded circle of friends that led to occasional girls' nights out. Jen went to a couple and came home giggling at the antics of the group, but she never made it a regular thing. One of Jen's Christmas presents to me, well, to both of us, was a really nice computer with AITA capabilities. It was to help us design furniture, and it really was a boon. I wasn't as computer literate as I needed to be, but that problem soon went away. There was a knock on the door of our shop and Jen answered, thinking it may be a customer. We kept the doors locked to keep distractions down. I saw her take a young woman into the cubicle we laughingly called an office. They talked for 20 minutes before they stood and shook hands. Jen brought the woman to me and introduced her. "Honey, this is Molly Graham. She's the very first employee of J&J Custom Furniture." Molly was a junior in college, majoring in interior design and minoring in furniture. She was looking for a place to intern over the summer, and we were her first pick. She seemed surprised no one else in her school had thought of us. It turned out she was there on a scholarship and needed part-time work, so we gave her 20 hours a week to see if she could fit our system. She didn't fit, she improved it, throwing out ideas I'd never even thought of. With her helping, we could get out almost 2 rockers a week. The only clash we had was when she wanted to mechanize a lot of the work. I shot it down immediately. If we mass produce, we wouldn't stand out from any of our other competitors. As it is now, every customer knows their rocker is handmade, every spindle turned by hand, every seat contoured to their bottom if they gave us specs. They had options in leg and header design, making each piece truly one of a kind. She didn't approve but understood. The custom seat was Jen's idea. She'd bought a bicycle once, $6,000, and it came without a seat. You had to order the seat to your exact bottom dimensions for another $1,500. I was amazed at the price. "Do you still have it?" "No, I got bored with it and gave it to some street kid who needed a bike. The point is, we could offer the same thing. So we did. We bought what amounted to sealed pouches of foam. All the customer had to do was shake it vigorously for 2 minutes to activate the gel. When it was fully inflated, they sat on it for 5 minutes, making a permanent impression of their butt. Then they sent it to us. We would scan the impression into our CAD system, and it would activate the machine that cut the general dimensions into the thick oak seat, and I would do the finish work. It was a very popular option. Of course, that particular option came at an extra $500, but very few opted not to do it. Molly had a friend who also needed to intern for his studies, and soon Zach joined us. He proved very adept at fitting the finished pieces, making the same small adjustments I would have made, and production went up again. I focused on carving, and Jen handled finish. By spring, we were ahead of orders by 3 weeks. It was a good thing, because we scheduled 2 weeks for our honeymoon. I had no idea where we were going. Jen begged me to let it be a surprise. By then, we were already a married couple. We slept together, we worked together, we played together. Jen still did some volunteer work and still spent time with her investors, but not nearly as much as before. Jan and the girls stayed close, and there were 2 girl weekends to different spas. I used the time to go hunting. I enjoyed the solitude and found over the years I didn't want to kill as I had in the past. So I carried a really nice camera and used it more than the rifle. I would still shoot, getting 2 nice deer and a good-sized bear during the season. I sent them to a professional butcher shop to be processed. Jen was a little leery and didn't enjoy deer, but she loved bear, especially bear sausage. She made me promise to take her next year. Things were barreling right along. During the 1st of April, Jen got approached by some old business associates wanting to use her to brand their new perfume. The pay would be very nice and the schedule would be light, filming most of the commercials at the same time, only going back for seasonal pitches. She didn't say anything at first, having her lawyers vet it to make sure it was kosher. Then she thought about it. The money was a little over $1 million a year, and they wanted a 3-year contract, with bonuses built in if the brand took off. Overall, it amounted to $5 million for roughly 5 commercials a year. Then she brought it to me, showing me all the paperwork. I read it and thought about it for a few days. I knew she wanted to do it and realized that somewhere inside, she missed the life. Do it if it makes you happy. I will admit that it makes me nervous. You'll be going back to the life of the rich and famous, the pampering, the bum kissing, the wild parties if you choose to go. I'm afraid you'll wake up and realize life with me was just a fantasy, just a taste of how the other half lives. I trust your love enough to believe that it will never happen. She wrapped me up, nuzzling my neck. This is my life. It's the life I want, the life I choose. Let me tell you why I'm doing it. Part of it is a favor for some of my mentors. Part of it is it can be fun now, not the deadly serious game it was before. I'll go in, do about 2 weeks worth of shoots and come back to my real life. Then, maybe 4 days, twice a year, for the holiday and summer seasons. 3 weeks, honey, for $5 million. The best part is all the money will go to the charity that outfits hazmat vehicles for fire departments. We could save lives, honey. She gave me a big kiss and giggled. Besides, I want to have your mom and Aunt Beth with me. I also want you to spend a few days with me. I think it will make you understand me better and realize this could never be any kind of threat to us. It's only maybe 7 to 9 weeks over 3 years. I think we can handle it. Then she sighed. I want to get the first one out of the way. In 10 more weeks, we quit playing house. I grinned. We've never played house. I consider us just as married now as I will in June. It's perfect the way we've done it. We've debugged the system, honey. It can only be smooth sailing from here. I ended up eating those words. Jen got her old agent back, saying she needed his insights. She still had her lawyers from her career, so there were no problems there. In 2 weeks, she was flying to New York. I was going to be with her the first 3 days, then I had to come home and run our business. I was going to fly back for the weekend, then she'd come home the following week. Mom couldn't stay the whole time, but would be with her as much as possible. Aunt Beth was in for the whole time. It didn't take me long to figure out I'd never make it in the modeling business. Most of the people she worked with were decent people, but some of the other, more powerful, ones were arrogant asses. I heard a director dressing down one of the bit players in the first commercial for no reason at all. I listened for a while before I snapped. Listen, a-hole. I think she got it the first 5 times you said it. Once she filtered out all the profanity. Why don't you do us all a favor and quit harassing the poor girl and let us enjoy some peace and quiet? The set went deadly quiet. It took a moment for the director to regain his powers of speech. Who the hell are you? It doesn't matter. Off my set. I mean right now. You're banned from any stage I'm on. If you knew how badly that didn't bother me, you'd be even more pissed. I think I like it here. Mind if I pull up a chair beside you and watch a genius at work? I've never been this close to a real god before. One of the sound men lost it, running off the stage while his screams of laughter floated behind him. The director glared at everyone who dared make eye contact before grabbing a chair, intending to fling it into the set people. I grabbed his hand. You need to stop and think about what you're doing. Is this considered professional behavior in your world? Look at those people. I bet half of them would murder you in your sleep and smile while they did it. Now put the chair down and park your bum in it, or I'll be doing the chair tossing, only it will be with you in it. Who the hell are you, and how did you get in here? Doesn't matter. I pay top dollar for security, and I'm going to make sure you fall down a lot on the way out. Try to get back in, and I'll have what's left of you arrested. Somebody call security. Everyone just looked at him, and nobody moved for a while. Finally, one of his assistants scurried out of the room. I grinned. Looks like we have a little time to kill. I'm going to enjoy screwing you up. I don't know where it would have gone if Jen hadn't walked onto the set just then. She smiled and spoke to a few people she remembered working with before she walked towards me. Before anyone could say anything, she wrapped her arms around me, giving them an eyeful with the kiss she laid on me. She pretended to notice the director for the first time. Her voice was definitely cool when she spoke. Hi, Bob. I heard they hired you for this shoot. Just so you know, I had a clause put into my contract that if I felt like I couldn't work with anyone on the set, they were gone, and that includes you. I better not hear about one temper tantrum or instances of you being a jerk to anyone. Are we clear? Before he could calm down enough to speak, she grinned. Oh, before I forget, this is my husband, and I love him very dearly. Any slight or disrespect he's given, if it comes back to me, whoever it was, is gone. We communicating clearly here? Understand? Or do I need to use smaller words? Or better yet, I'll let him handle it. He was a soldier, Bob, and he spent a year getting paid to kill people. Just thought you should know. Instead of answering, Bob stormed off the stage, screaming for someone. She kissed me again. I see you met Bob. He's an a-hole, but he's a really good director. It's well known in the industry that we don't like each other, but we're both professionals. If he keeps his mouth shut and does his job, we'll be fine. I had a really bad feeling about the whole situation. The perfume, seductive whisper, smelled surprisingly good. You better like it, Jen whispered. I'm getting an extra $200,000 to wear it exclusively for the length of the contract. Wouldn't do to have the spokesmodel be caught wearing Chanel, now would it? I watched as she filmed the first, her in a very flattering evening gown as she walked through a room of people. Everyone just stopped and stared, especially the men. She reached the doorway and looked back, winking at the camera. Never underestimate the power of a seductive whisper, she smirked, crooking her finger at the most handsome man in the room. He almost ran to her, and the next shot was of him with his coat off and his shirt open, hair tousled, as Jen ran her hand up his chest and whispered in his ear. He looked like he was about to faint. It took 8 takes and was filmed with 5 cameras. The editor spliced it together, and we watched it with the producer and owner of the product. They were well pleased. Bob, of course, objected, saying she should be in lingerie. The owner snorted. It's named Seductive Whisper, not Screaming 304. It's much more powerful this way, hints instead of statements. I like it. The producer immediately said he'd have it polished for final approval by the next day and could hit television, cable, streaming, and even movie trailers by the next week. Bob stomped out, pissed. Jen just smiled. I had to get back to the business. It wasn't that I didn't trust our interns, no, that's not quite true. I didn't trust Molly. She was always pushing for more automation and shortcuts to increase volume. I finally had to explain to her that when she owned a business, she could call the shots. Jen and I had agreed to let her work through the summer if she behaved, and then replace her. I was right. Molly had taken advantage and pushed out more chairs than was possible under our business model. I inspected them, and 2 needed to be taken apart for rework, something terribly irritating after the glue had set. I would probably end up rejecting them instead of selling them. I'd fix them up and donate them to a hospital somewhere. Molly blew up when I confronted her, saying it was time to get out of the Stone Age and join the real world. I fired her. She couldn't believe it. "You'll have a hard time replacing me. I'm damn good at what I do." That would probably explain why I'm forced to eat $10,000 worth of production. "I really am sorry, Molly. You'd make a damn fine craftsman if you could discipline yourself. You have to want that, and you don't. You want the quick, easy. So what if the customer gets an inferior product way? Let's just agree to disagree and get on with our lives." She immediately filed a complaint with the State Labor Board, claiming sexual harassment and creating a hostile workplace. I called the local office and told them I would show up for the appointment with video of every moment she had spent in my building, including audio, and was going to insist that every second be watched. I also told them I intended to sue Molly for false accusations, creating a hostile workplace for me and the rest of my employees, and damaging my professional reputation. Then I had my lawyer serve Molly for slander, libel, and as many other charges as my lawyer thought would stick. She called him 2 days later and offered to rescind the complaint if I would drop the charges. We let her twist in the wind for 2 weeks before agreeing if she issued a public apology. It ate at her, but she did it. I had wired the shop because of attempted break-ins, trying to steal any finished furniture. If anyone tried to enter without the safety code, an alarm would trip in my house as well as at the local sheriff's office. They managed to catch 2, but not a third one. I figure he would be easy to identify if he went to a hospital. He'd be the guy getting rock salt out of his bum. While all this was going on, I didn't get to return to New York. Jen was due back in 2 days when Beth called. "You need to get up here. Something has happened," and Jen looks scared to death most of the time. "She won't let me out of her sight, and your mom is already on the way." I dropped what I was doing and flew up. I went straight from the airport to the studios. Mom met me at the gate, and the security guard acted like he didn't want me inside. Mom got right in his face. "If you value your job, you'll get out of the way." His wife is Jen Foster, the star of the ads. There seems to be some concern for my future daughter-in-law's well-being. "You have a choice: obstruct us and have the cops swarm the place, or get out of the way." He moved aside. Mom turned back when we were almost out of sight to see him dialing. "You need to put that phone away, boy. If we find anything wrong and discover you warned someone, believe me when I tell you when Jamie is through with you, you'll wish you'd been arrested." Mom filled me in as we walked. She's in the director's office with him and one of the associate producers. Jen has been pale and shaky for 2 days, and I'm sensing something bad happened, but she won't talk to us about it. When we showed up for the meeting, they shoved me and Beth out the door and locked it. She's been in there 45 minutes. I had a full head of steam when I walked into his office suite. A receptionist tried to stop me and I ignored her. Then his chief assistant decided it was his personal duty to make sure I didn't get through the door. He was still unconscious an hour later when the cops got there. I kicked the door open just in time to see her in a corner, holding an office chair. Her blouse was ripped and she'd been crying. Jack was standing there grinning. "If you don't get out of those clothes right now, I'll make sure your husband sees the tape." He was waving a phone at her while the associate producer was grabbing at the chair. Jack turned when the door exploded, just in time to see the fist connect with his jaw. I broke it, and when he hit the floor, I got a couple of short ribs and nailed him in the crotch. He was on the floor gagging when I turned to the other man. "Wait just a minute. If you don't..." I took out his kneecap, then gave him a knee to the face as he fell. Just on general principles, I kicked him in the balls. Jen screamed and collapsed, out cold. I was hugging her, kissing her face, when the cops got there. It was a really good thing Jen was rich, because they tossed my bum in jail. I was charged with trespassing, aggravated assault, 3 counts, 1 for each a-hole I put down, felony trespass, breaking and entering for kicking the door in, and a few more things I don't really remember. My bail was $1 million, which Jen promptly posted. The truth came out in the discovery process of the trial. Jen had been dosed with a date assault drug 2 days before the altercation at a cocktail party for the release of the commercials. They almost assaulted her, stripping her down to her panties, when Jen had a sudden flash of sobriety and nailed Bob in the balls. He let out a high-pitched scream that had people pounding on the door. They managed to get Jin in bed before opening it, saying she'd had too much to drink and they were caring for her. Beth had also been dosed with sleeping pills and was also out. A couple of the women there were models with minor roles in the commercial and clustered around Jin. Even though Bob threatened them, Jin recovered but knew something had happened. She had gone to his office to confront him when I arrived on the scene. It had gotten ugly, to the point Jin was holding the chair and screaming for help. How do we know all this? I grabbed Bob's phone before the cops got there. He was using it to film Jin fighting back, taunting her. There was also footage of them in the bedroom stripping off her clothes and talk between the two a-holes of what they were going to do with her. There was also footage of 2 more women who had been drugged and assaulted. I gave it to the DA, warning him I'd made copies, and if justice wasn't served, the footage would go viral. Even if he got away with it in court, the court of public opinion would sink his career. There was a big debate over whether the footage was legally obtained, but in the end the authorities hadn't taken the phone I had, and I'd given it to them claiming there was evidence about Jin on it. It was said Bob fainted when the cops hauled him in for questioning. They'd already gotten to the producer and he'd rolled instantly, trying to save his bum. Bob tried to get Jin to drop the charges, offering her $1 million. She laughed. His lawyers will end up costing more than that. I consider it money well spent. It never went to trial. Bob saw the writing on the wall and struck a deal. In exchange for a guilty plea on lesser charges, he got 5 years at a Camp Cupcake, eligible for parole in 13 months. He also had to register as a sex offender, a charge that effectively ended what was left of his career. The 2 women he had molested earlier were suing him in civil court, and it was a pretty good bet he'd be broke by the time he got out. I didn't plan or sanction it, but I heard he had a pretty interesting incarceration. He got beaten up a few times and found out what it was like to be the victim of an unwilling sexual encounter. It might have had a tennis court, but it was still a prison. The producer wasn't so lucky, doing 7 months in a regular minimum security prison. I don't know if he had a pleasant stay. I do know he got busted for fighting and had to do another 4 months. The receptionist and assistant withdrew charges when they were told the DA was thinking of charging them with aiding and facilitating assault. The owner of the perfume and the executive producer were beside themselves with anger and regret for what Jin had to go through. They promised her the next shoot, unless she wanted out of the contract, would be in another location with a crew she had to approve of before shooting started. She thought about it and decided to finish the contract. Her next shoot was scheduled for Miami for the summer ad and Aspen for the winter one. I avoided jail time, but it was a close thing. When it went to court, the lawyers portrayed me as a man willing to do anything to save his wife from sexual assault. Pretty easy to do because that's what happened. I was on probation in the state of New York for a year, and they firmly suggested I spend my vacations elsewhere. Not a problem. They had to make an exception for the first probation visit, but managed to transfer it to my home state for the rest. Jen recovered in time for the wedding. I was all for postponing it until she was more settled, and she surprised me by how vehement she was in refusing. Not no, but hell no. I need this, honey. I want good memories, not to wake up with nightmares like I did for a while. So it came to pass that an average man wed a millionaire supermodel in a small country church on a sunny June afternoon. The service was beautiful, even though we had to hire half the cops in our county and surrounding areas to keep the hordes of reporters away. A few of the more slimy ones were arrested, which they couldn't believe, and held in jail until the wedding was history. The rest took the hint and pretty much behaved. 200 or more cameras clicked like mad when we exited the church. Jen's face was glowing, and she was so happy she blew kisses at the reporters. The cops got a laugh out of the fact the reporters would not have another opportunity for pictures because we got into the small helicopter that we'd flown in 2 days before and hidden, lifting off and away before they could react. We expected a few reporters initially because she was still rich and famous, but her attack and subsequent legal action pushed her right back into the limelight. It got so bad we had to fence our property and have security guards for a while. It developed into a game. The guards would tell us where they were hiding, and I'd grab the shotguns and clay targets. We'd set the thrower so the targets would be well into the air, but directly over their heads before we shot. Jen was really good at it, and she'd die laughing when they would break cover and run, pieces of clay raining down on them. A few tried to press charges, but the sheriff just shrugged. They have a legal right to discharge their firearms on their own property, as long as it's before 11 at night and after daylight in the mornings. Not much I can do about that. You shouldn't be dumb enough to be standing on a skeet range. We vacationed in a warm climate on a small private island. On the third day, I told her it was time to get on with the baby making and she laughed, rubbing her tummy. This isn't fat, baby. I'm 10 weeks along. I rolled over, looking at the smooth back of the love of my life. Our 30th anniversary was in 3 weeks. We were going to spend it on the same little island as our honeymoon. Now, though, we own the island. The original owner did not manage his money well, and when he had to sell it, Jen bought it without telling me. We'd owned it for 10 years, and it was the preferred vacation spot for our family. JJ, Jen Jr., had chosen to follow my footsteps and went into furniture design. The only thing that disappointed me with her choice was she preferred to work in plastic and metals. She won awards, so I guess it was all right. She did insist that I make her rocker when she and her husband announced they were pregnant. Her daughter is 8, and Grandma Jen is her favorite babysitter. I think she likes me, too, but it could be the little figures I carve for her. Our son Eric chose another path and became a lawyer. He married, then divorced 2 years later. She went for the money, only to discover he had none except for his salary. He was a little leery of women for a while. Then one day Jack showed up. He had stayed in touch over the years and managed to make one weekend a summer to fish with us. His new wife was a little overwhelmed at first. She caught a nice bass, and it was off to the races. Allison had bonded to her really well. She was 11 when they married, a time when a mother's guidance was welcome. Bonnie had never had children, but was soon as protective as a mother bear. I pitied the first boy who dared ask Allison out. She'd probably know everything about him going back 4 generations before he rang the doorbell. We were at her maternity shower, and she cried hard when we gave her the rocker. Jack wanted to buy it, but we insisted it be a gift. It was going to be a girl. Poor Jack didn't have a chance. Fast forward 26 years. Jack came by with his family for our annual fishing expedition. By then our kids were grown, but they participated, both having learned to love the water. We had to have several boats, so we rented a couple of pontoons. The old people ended up together, and the younger ones paired off on the others. JJ, her husband and 3 kids went with Allison and her second husband and their 3 kids collectively, one from his past marriage. That left Eric and Jack's youngest daughter Melanie. You could hear them arguing over the water a few times, and we looked at each other and sighed. Eric was divorced and Mel had broken up with her longtime boyfriend 2 months before the wedding. He was pissed because he had to sign a prenup specifying he could never touch any inheritances she might receive, and took it out by screwing her best friend. I don't think he meant to get caught, but he did, and she had him out of her apartment the next day. Whatever they argued about, they must have resolved it by the time we got back to the landing. Everyone went back to the house to clean fish and prepare for the big dinner we always had, except Eric and Mel. They wanted to go on a sunset cruise. We just smiled, and one thing led to another. They married 14 months later, and they just announced their first pregnancy. Jack came to me later in the evening, wanting me to help him build a rocker. I was more than happy to help. They didn't have a prenup, insisting it was not necessary. Jack told me he never felt more confident in his life when he tore up the papers he'd prepared. Jen made me retire at 50, though I still occasionally made a rocker or bedroom suite for old friends. I found myself thinking of her first husband every once in a while. Steve had everything he could ever want and was just too greedy, ambitious, driven. Pick a word. He just couldn't be happy with what he had, and he had it all. I regret his death and feel a bit guilty about my happiness occasionally, but I get over it pretty quickly, deep down. I'm sure they would have divorced if Jen had found out about the vasectomy. I regret thinking negative thoughts about him. He was always a friend to me, but his priority should have been his wife and her happiness. If he couldn't give it to her, he should have told her and let her go. I don't think he would have ever done that. He was too proud of the perfect wife on his arms at dinners and events. I don't think he ever realized his fantasy wasn't real, that Jen, for all her beauty, was just a woman. A woman who needed love, respect, and attention from her mate. Seems pretty simple, doesn't it? I had a friend from my childhood whom I had lost touch with over the years. I did invite him to the wedding, surprised as heck when he showed up with a beautiful woman on his arm. After that, He was an infrequent visitor, always stopping by on his way to somewhere. Lenny, to be kind, was not a handsome man. His force of personality made him rise above the pretty people around him, so I could kind of understand the relationship. Despite his average looks and quiet dress, Lenny was famous. He wrote his first novel at 29, his first bestseller at 33, and had a string of very successful novels at 50. 7 had been made into films. We didn't even know he knew how to spell. I was reminded of him as I looked at Jen's flawless back. We were sitting at a table as the reception was winding down, talking. He always had an odd sense of humor, and he'd been laughing all night. Jen finally asked him what was so funny. "You guys." Not in a haha way though. "You're the stuff of myths. Proof that unicorns exist." Jen thought about that for a while, even looked up his old free stuff. That led to a few adventures in the bedroom and some pretty frank discussions. All good ones. One day Melody and the girls came by, laughing as they piled into Jen's SUV for an afternoon out. That night, I noticed a bandage on her shoulder. She assured me it was just a minor procedure she had done, something so simple she didn't want me to bother about. 3 days later, she came out of the shower with some medicine in her hand. "Honey, will you rub this on my shoulder?" The man doing the procedure said it would help it heat quicker. Like I was gonna say no. I just froze when she turned her back. The procedure turned out to be a tattoo. Something she told me she'd always wanted but didn't get while she was modeling. She said she worked with girls that had tattoos and how much longer they had to stay in the makeup chairs to cover them for a shoot. So she held off. The tattoo was of 2 unicorns, a male and a female, necks entwined while they nuzzled each other. The artist was the best she could find, and the colors were vibrant, the details painstaking. It was beautiful and I told her so, promising to kiss it when it healed more. A year after JJ was born, the tattoo was modified, showing a little unicorn beside the couple. After Eric, another was added on the other side. The artist asked permission to show them in a magazine article about his work. It was the last time Jen modeled, looking over her shoulder with a smile, her bare back glowing while the tattoos looked like they were ready to trot off her shoulder. It became the cover photo for the issue. The artist was suddenly turning down work from all kinds of famous people because he was swamped. Some wanted the same tattoo, but he refused. Part of the agreement of her letting him show the tattoo was that he never did another, and he honored his word. I kissed the little unicorns and lingered over the big one. Jen cooed and turned, pulling me into her. Sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales come true. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.